All aspects of parenting, whether your children are 3 years old, 33 years old, or 63 years old, can be a challenge. But pregnancy, birth, and the first year of your baby's life is a really unique time, and it can be really overwhelming, both positively and in a more difficult sense. So as soon as we conceive a baby, our body and our brain starts to change. And what's starting to happen is it's preparing us to safeguard and look after a child, for our child to become the absolute center of our worlds. So our hormone levels start to change, and this can leave you feeling physically unwell, so morning sickness, which can be miserable, feeling extremely tired, but also your emotions start to lose balance. So we know now that activity starts to increase in the areas of the brain that are responsible for empathy and for anxiety. So this is trying to prepare us for the absolutely overwhelming love that we're about to feel for our babies, the fierce protectiveness that we're going to feel, and also the constant worry about them. And we actually lose grey matter from our brains. So our brains actually shrink during pregnancy, and this is associated with what people term pregnancy or baby brain. So not being able to remember things as well as before, not being quite so on it. And actually that grey matter stays depleted for the first 1 to 2 years of our baby's life. So we only start to regain that grey matter after our babies have turned 2 years old. But it's actually happening for a reason, and the areas of the brain that shrink the most are those associated with social cognition. So this is the area of our brain that helps us to interpret what somebody is thinking or what they're feeling. So it might sound counterproductive for this area of our brain to shrink, but actually what's thought to be happening is like a fine tuning of those skills. So in mums who've just had babies, who are shown pictures of their babies, studies show those areas of the brain absolutely lighting up with activity when they see a picture of their baby. And what's happening within the brain is it's becoming more successful, it's becoming better at decoding and knowing what the baby wants from us. So it helps us to look after the baby. It helps us to figure out, is that a hunger cry? Is it a pain cry? Do they want to be picked up and held? And of course, it isn't just physical changes that are happening during a pregnancy. Your whole life is changing. So there are a lot of stresses and worries about the massive to-do list that there is to get everything ready for a baby. Finances, job changes, how's your relationship going to change? What kind of mum are you going to be? Are you going to cope? Is baby okay? There are so many things that women worry about during pregnancy. So it's very easy to see how these mental health difficulties can start to creep in at a really early stage in this process. So as soon as you conceive that baby, your body is changing, your brain is changing, you're worrying about things that you haven't had to think about before. And it's very easy for those things to spiral if you're not honest with yourself and with other people about how they're impacting on you. And after pregnancy comes the birth. Now, the birth is often right up there on a woman's list of things that she is frightened of. And that's because the birth is completely unpredictable, it's unknown, you don't know how it's going to go, you don't know what's going to happen. And that's really, really frightening. It's an extremely natural experience, but our bodies do not always play ball. They don't always do what we would like them to do. And that can be really upsetting for a woman, and she can be left with a lot of feelings around, why was my body not able to do it? After birth, we can be left with a whole host of feelings. Some people might have had quite a traumatic birth and they might be left feeling really quite traumatized. For others, it might have been really quick and taken them by surprise. There are so many feelings. Luckily, a lot of hospitals, and especially in this area, offer a service called kind of birth reflections. So after the birth, you can sit down with a midwife who has all of your notes, and you can ask whatever questions you would like to and talk through the experience. But birth can also be an incredibly empowering and positive and amazing experience. And things like hypnobirthing courses can really help to just give you little tips, things that you can do to try and impact and influence on your birth experience. You can't control what is going to happen, but you can be in the best mindset, the best emotional state possible to try and get the best outcome for you and your baby. And then after the birth, you're now suddenly you have to try and figure out how on earth you look after this tiny little human. You will be sleep deprived. You may be in some physical discomfort from the pregnancy and from the birth, but you have this overwhelming sense of responsibility for this tiny little person. Now, the first few weeks, months can be especially challenging for a new mum, trying to figure out what on earth you're doing, and up to 80% of women can experience something called the baby blues. Now, these baby blues tend to last for a few weeks. If you notice that a low mood or anxiety is starting to last much longer than a few weeks, then you may be looking at something more like perinatal anxiety or postnatal depression. But it's very, very normal and very common for women to not feel fantastic in the first few weeks of their baby's life. And this isn't just I'm tired and this is hard. This is perhaps feeling I haven't bonded in the way that I imagined that I would. Motherhood isn't what I thought it would be, and I feel disappointed about that. And then I feel guilty for feeling disappointed. And you may also find it difficult with the flood of really positive feelings that you're having towards your baby, that overwhelming love that you might feel for them, because with that comes constant worry about your baby. So it can bring kind of obsessive compulsive type behaviors. So really constantly checking that your baby is still breathing, or checking their temperature, making sure that they're feeding correctly. We become obsessed because we love this thing so much and we want to protect it so much.